You do not need to strive, to beg, or to convince the world of your worth. The moment you assume your desire to be real, you are walking through a door that no man can shut. This is the power of the unseen realm, the kingdom within you. What appears to be locked to the senses is already open in the spirit. And when you dare to believe in that unseen door, when you walk by inner sight instead of outer evidence, God responds. Not a distant God, but the presence within you, your own wonderful I am. You were never meant to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You were never created to be anxious, troubled, or tossed about like a ship in a storm. You were formed in the image of peace, of stillness, of divine assurance, and the moment you remember who you are, worry begins to dissolve like mist before the morning sun. Worry is born out of forgetfulness of your source, forgetfulness of your power, forgetfulness of the truth. You think you must fix it, solve it, push it, make it happen. But you do not. Life unfolds through assumption, not effort. God is not asking you to figure it out. God is asking you to rest in what already is. For what you desire already exists. The door is already open. The way is already made. But you cannot walk through it until you see it within, until you trust it within, until you accept it as already done. To stop worrying is to stop resisting. To stop worrying is to stop doubting that what you desire is yours. You stop worrying when you stop looking at appearances and start listening to the still, small voice within. That voice that says, all is well. That voice that declares the end from the beginning. That voice that knows the answer before the question ever forms on your lips. You say you trust God, but trust is not a word. It is a feeling. It is an inner conviction. Trust is quiet confidence in the invisible. Trust is the refusal to be moved by what your senses tell you. Trust is the awareness that the thing you want is already yours, because you saw it within. And having seen it within, it must take form without. Every time you worry, you are imagining something you do not want. And imagination is the workshop of reality. If you use your imagination against yourself, do not be surprised when fear becomes your experience. But if you learn to imagine only the good, only the lovely, only the fulfilled desire, then worry fades like a shadow at noon. This is not about pretending that you feel peaceful while inwardly you tremble. No, this is about reconditioning your inner world. This is about persistently assuming that the answer is done, that God has already moved, that the path is clear even if you can't see it yet, that everything is aligning even while the outer world still looks the same. You don't beg for what's already yours. You don't plead with God to do what's already been done. You assume it. You live from the end. You rest in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You let that feeling saturate your being. You walk through life not as someone hoping things will work out, but as one who knows they already have. When worry rises, it is only a signal. You've forgotten who you are. Come back. Return to the inner sanctuary. Return to the vision. Assume the feeling of the answer and stay there. Dwell there. Live there. For it is in that sacred dwelling place that all things are added unto you. Not by might, not by struggle, but by alignment. You stop worrying not by force, but by focus, by deliberately choosing again and again to feel as if it's already done, to trust that what you hold in consciousness must clothe itself in form. God is not far off, waiting to bless you. God is the power moving through your imagination, fulfilling every image you persistently accept as true. And so when the mind begins to wander, when fear whispers its lies, you answer it with knowing. You answer it with silence. You answer it with stillness that says, I already have it, that says it is finished, that says I trust the unseen more than the seen. And as you hold to that inner state, life bends. Reality reshapes itself. And what once caused you to worry now becomes the testimony of your faith. You were not created to worry. Worry is not your natural state. It is not your inheritance. From the beginning, you were fashioned out of divine peace, not anxiety. You were imagined into existence by a mind that only knows love, certainty, and infinite supply. You are not here to live by survival instincts or be tormented by doubt and fear. You are not meant to constantly brace for the worst, to feel at the mercy of circumstances, or to try to earn your worth through endless struggle. That idea that you must worry in order to be responsible, that you must be anxious to prove you care, is a lie passed down through generations of forgetfulness. The truth is far more powerful and far more simple. You were created to rest, to trust, to know within yourself that you are supported by a force far greater than your own willpower. Every time you worry, you are stepping outside your divine nature. You are entertaining a state of mind that contradicts the truth of who you are. Worry suggests that you are alone, that there is no divine orchestration, that what you desire may not come, that life may not support you, but none of that is real. It may feel real, it may appear loud and urgent, but it is not truth. You were not created to carry burdens heavier than your soul can hold. You were created to live from a place of harmony, faith, and inner knowing. Worry is not your responsibility. Creation is. You were given imagination, not panic. You were given inner vision, not inner torment. Worry is the misuse of imagination. It is the act of projecting into the future something unwanted and then emotionally preparing to receive it. But you were not meant to do this. You were meant to imagine the good, the lovely, the healing, the completed. You were meant to live from a place of knowing that everything is already finished in the mind of God, that all things are already aligned with your highest good. But you cannot see it if you are looking through the lens of worry. Worry distorts your spiritual vision. It clouds the truth and binds your awareness to fear. Stop for a moment and become still. Not in your body, but in your mind. Ask yourself, what if everything is already working out for me? What if the timing is already perfect? What if the door is already open in the unseen realm, and all I need to do is walk in consciousness until it appears in form? This is the place of divine remembrance, the place where you begin to feel your true self again. Not the self defined by effort and external evidence, but the self that knows the truth by feeling it, not by seeing it. You are not designed to live reactively. You were designed to live imaginatively. Worry makes you reactive. It convinces you that the outer world determines your fate. But you were never meant to respond to circumstances as if they are your master. You were created to rule over them, to rise above appearances, to bring forth the unseen into the seen through the power of inner conviction. When you worry, you step into a false identity, one where you believe that you must do it all alone, where your faith wavers with every obstacle. But when you trust, truly trust, you return to the knowing that you are backed by an eternal promise, that all you need is already provided. Worry is a habit of those who have forgotten that God lives within. It is a pattern, not a destiny. It is a state, not a sentence. And you have the power to choose again. You have the power to return to stillness, to return to truth, to let go of control and rest in the divine rhythm of your life. Let yourself be held. Let yourself be led. You are not created to carry everything, to fix every detail, to map out every outcome. You are created to see the end from the beginning, to walk by inner vision, and to trust that what you see within must come to pass. This is not laziness. This is divine confidence. This is not passivity. This is spiritual alignment. For when you know the outcome within, you stop scrambling in the outer, you stop panicking over timing, you stop doubting the path, you stop worshipping appearances, and instead return to the place of knowing. In that place, worry cannot exist, not because problems disappear, but because you stop identifying with them. You no longer say, this is my lack, or this is my fear, or this is my obstacle. You begin to say, this is passing, but I am eternal. This is noise, but I am peace. This is a shadow, but I am the light. You were not created to worry. You were created to assume the state of the answered prayer, the completed journey, the fulfilled vision. And as you live in that state, worry withers. It cannot grow in the presence of sustained inner faith. It cannot thrive in the atmosphere of divine remembrance. You return to who you are, not a warrior, not a struggler, not a beggar, but a being of light, of authority, of creative power. And life unfolds through assumption, not effort. The world will tell you to push, to grind, to hustle, to make it happen at all costs. But divine law is different. It doesn't operate through strain. It operates through stillness, through certainty, through the quiet acceptance that what you desire is already done, already waiting for you to align with it. Assumption is the key that unlocks the door. Not assumption in the worldly sense, not a guess, not a gamble, but spiritual assumption. The inner acceptance that the end is already yours, that the desire fulfilled is the only reality worth entertaining. You do not manifest by chasing. You do not receive by doubting. You receive by stepping into the feeling of the thing you want, and living from that place as though it were already yours. This is the sacred art of assumption. This is the quiet power that shapes mountains and parts seas, not by force but by faith. You assume the state of the answered prayer. You occupy the mind of the fulfilled desire. You speak from the victory, not toward it. And as you persist in that state, the outer world conforms, not because you fought it, but because you believe beyond it. Effort belongs to the realm of separation. Assumption belongs to the realm of oneness. Effort says, I must do something to make this real. Assumption says, it is already real, and I now live in harmony with it. This is not denial. This is not delusion. This is the boldness of spiritual awareness, the unshakable knowing that inner reality creates outer form, that nothing happens outside of consciousness, that what you consistently accept as true within must express itself without. The reason so many stay trapped in cycles of worry and effort is because they are still trying to create from lack. They are still assuming that they do not yet have what they want, and therefore they must do to get it. But what you do will always flow from what you believe. What you attract will always reflect what you assume. If you live in a state of I don't have, then no matter how much you work, you are reinforcing the absence of your desire. But if you live in the state of I already received, then every action becomes inspired, every step becomes guided, every moment becomes a bridge to the inevitable. You are not here to make it happen. You are here to assume it's already happened. That assumption becomes your dwelling place. That dwelling place becomes your reality. For as within, so without. As you believe, so shall it be. Assumption doesn't mean you don't act. It means your action is no longer frantic. It is no longer rooted in fear. It flows naturally, easily, with divine timing and precision, because it is anchored in a state of already having. You no longer ask, how will this happen? You declare, it has already happened. I need only stay faithful to the vision. When you live by assumption, you shift from effort to embodiment. You are no longer trying to get something. You are now being someone. You are being the version of yourself who already received the thing. You are thinking like them, feeling like them, moving through the world like them. That inner embodiment is the signal, the frequency, the magnetic field that draws your desire to you, not through labor but through alignment. You begin to see that every delay, every silence, every closed door was never punishment. It was only waiting for your assumption to match the promise. Life is not withholding from you. It is responding to you. It is mirroring your dominant inner state. Change your state, and the reflection must change, not because you earned it, but because you assumed it. This is the simplicity of divine law. It does not ask for perfection. It asks for persistence. Persistence in the inner knowing. Persistence in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Persistence in the assumption that what you see within is more real than what you see without. This is how the unseen becomes seen. This is how the impossible becomes inevitable. Not by the strength of your effort, but by the steadiness of your assumption. You live from the end, not toward it. You think from the desire fulfilled, not toward its fulfillment. You don't use prayer to beg. You use it to align. You don't use faith to cope. You use it to create. And creation is not a future event. It is a present awareness. The moment you assume it is done, something shifts in the unseen. The path begins to clear. The answer begins to form. The world, though it may seem unchanged, begins to bend around the one who dares to believe. And so you choose. In every moment you choose to worry or to assume. You choose to struggle or to trust. You choose to force or to align. One way leads to exhaustion. The other leads to peace. One builds a reality of fear. The other builds a reality of fulfillment. The choice is yours, and so is the power. Trust is not a word, it is a state of being. It is not something you say, it is something you feel. Many speak of trusting God, but their hearts remain in turmoil. Their minds are full of questions, doubts, and fearful imaginings. Trust, real trust, is silent. It does not argue with appearances. It does not demand evidence before it rests. It moves inward, settles into the unseen, and says quietly, it is already done. That is the essence of trust, not a desperate hoping, not a pleading prayer, but an inner agreement with the divine that what is promised is already fulfilled. You can only truly trust God when you have learned to trust the vision within yourself. The moment you see the desire clearly, and you feel the reality of it within, you are called to rest, to rest. not in the sense of inactivity, but in the sense of inward stillness, the absence of resistance. That stillness is the fruit of trust. Trust knows the seed is already planted and does not dig it up daily to check for growth. Trust allows the process to unfold without panic. It understands that delay is not denial, that silence is not abandonment. It believes in divine orchestration even when the outer world seems out of tune. When you walk by sight, you will always be tossed by the winds of uncertainty. The world will show you contradictions, closed doors, rejection, lack, and your senses will scream that things are not working. But trust does not live by the senses. Trust lives by the inner eye. It feels the truth of what is coming, even when it cannot yet be touched. That is the great divide between the one who trusts and the one who wavers. The one who wavers demands external proof before they feel peace. The one who trusts feels peace before the proof appears. And in doing so, they become the cause of the manifestation. To say you trust God while feeling anxious is to live in contradiction. True trust leaves no room for panic. It leaves no room for struggle. It doesn't mean you don't feel emotions. It means your emotions no longer have the final word. Trust makes you calm in the storm. It makes you laugh in the face of delay. It makes you declare, I already have it, even when there's no sign in sight. And that declaration is not empty. It is not made to impress others. It is the deep knowing that inner reality precedes outer form. So many claim to trust, yet they cannot rest. They cannot stop rehearsing worst-case scenarios. They cannot stop asking when, how, or what if. These are signs that the mind is still bound to the illusion of separation. You cannot trust God and believe you are alone. You cannot trust and still believe that life happens to you rather than through you. Trust reconnects you to your divine nature. It reminds you that you and God are not two. The power that created the universe lives in you. That power knows what you need, knows how to bring it, and is always working, even in the silence, even in the dark. Trust is not built in the light. It is built in the moments where you cannot see the way. It is built when you choose to believe despite the lack of evidence. It is built when you lean not on your own understanding, but on the inner conviction that the outcome is already secure. That kind of trust cannot be shaken, because it does not depend on facts. It depends on truth, and truth is unchanging. Truth says what you desire is already yours. Truth says, I go before you and make the crooked places straight. Truth says it is finished. You cultivate trust by returning again and again to the inner feeling of completion. You stop waiting for something to happen out there and begin to feel it has already happened within you. You stop speaking of your desire as something in the future and start referring to it as a current reality. That shift from future to present is the signature of trust. You begin to say, I am already healed. I already have my answer. It is already unfolding for me. And you say it not to make it true, but because you know it is true. Trust means letting go of timelines. It means releasing your attachment to outcomes. You no longer watch the clock or count the days. You no longer compare your journey to another's. You stop asking, why hasn't it happened yet? And instead affirm, it's unfolding perfectly. That kind of trust cannot be faked. It must be felt. And when you feel it, when you walk in it, you begin to see miracles. Not because you begged for them, but because you aligned with them. To trust God is to stop micromanaging the process. You do not need to figure out the how. You do not need to chase signs or manipulate circumstances. Your only job is to assume the end, to enter the state of the wish fulfilled, to remain there, unmoved, unshaken, resting in the knowing that what you have imagined, felt, and accepted as true is already on its way to form. The outer must respond to the inner. That is law. And trust is the bridge between the inner vision and the outer manifestation. Trust is also what sustains you in the waiting. It makes the wait feel short. It makes the silence feel sacred. When you truly trust, you stop rushing. You understand that divine timing is never late, and what is meant for you cannot miss you. You stop asking, what if it doesn't happen, and start declaring it has already happened. And as you live in that state, life bends around your inner assumption. The world rearranges itself to match the feeling you have chosen to dwell in. Imagination shapes reality. There is no power greater than the human imagination used with intention. It is the womb of all creation, the bridge between the seen and the unseen. What you consistently imagine, what you feel as real, must manifest. For imagination is not fantasy. It is the formative substance of all things. Everything that exists first existed in thought. Every structure, every invention, every miracle, every breakthrough was first a picture in someone's mind. That is the mystery of creation, and you hold it within you. You are not merely a spectator in this life. You are the cause of it. Most people imagine unconsciously. They replay fears, replay trauma, rehearse worst-case scenarios, and then they are shocked when their life reflects what they have been meditating on. But you cannot plant thorns and expect roses. You cannot entertain fear and expect peace. What you dwell on in imagination is what you water, and what you water grows. This is not punishment. This is not superstition. This is law. Imagination, clothed in feeling, is the seed of every event in your life. When you begin to use it consciously, to assume what you desire already exists, you become the master of your reality. You must understand that imagination is not just visualization. It is not just pictures in the mind. It is felt experience. It is entering a scene so deeply in consciousness that it becomes real to you. You feel it in your body. You see it with the inner eye. You hear the words, the sounds, the atmosphere of that desired outcome. You let it become so real inside you that the outer world loses its grip. That is when imagination becomes creation. Not when it is casual, but when it is saturated with emotion and belief. Every time you imagine the worst, you are creating it in seed form. Every time you imagine the best, you are creating it too. The world you live in tomorrow is being shaped by the images you hold today. You cannot escape this truth. You can only learn to use it. Use it to imagine from the end, not toward the end, but from it. Enter the state of the answered prayer and dwell there. Live there. Let it become more familiar to you than the old reality. Let the imagined experience become your new home in consciousness, and the outer must eventually come into agreement. You do not need to see results to know it's working. You only need to persist in the state. Reality is delayed, not denied. What you imagine now must take form if you hold to it. The longer you persist, the more inevitable it becomes. And it is not about intensity, it is about consistency. You must be more loyal to your imagination than to your fears. You must be more faithful to the image of the fulfilled desire than to the appearance of lack. That faith, quiet, steady, unwavering, is what brings the invisible into form. Imagination is the language of spirit. It is how the divine speaks to you. The dreams you dream, the desires you feel, the images that stir your heart, they are not random. They are invitations. Invitations to enter a new state of being, a new timeline, a new reality. But you cannot visit the state and expect it to manifest. You must move in. You must dwell in the scene of your desire fulfilled and refuse to leave. You must feel the outcome as real and let that feeling lead your thoughts, your actions, your emotions. That is the power of conscious imagination. The world around you is simply a reflection of what you've been imagining. Persistently. If you want to change the world, you must first change the image you hold within. That image, when combined with feeling and faith, becomes the mold through which life flows. Do not underestimate the quiet moments you spend in inner vision. Those moments are not idle. They are powerful. They are sacred. In those moments, you are creating not through toil, but through trust. Not through action, but through assumption. Not through force, but through feeling. If you would change your life, change your imagination. Stop telling the same story. Stop rehearsing lack. Stop repeating the old identity. Begin to imagine yourself as the person who already has what you desire. Imagine yourself living the life you've asked for. Let the scene unfold. Let the emotion rise. Let the feeling settle in your chest. And then stay there. Return to it daily. Visit it in the quiet. Walk through it in your mind. Speak from it. Think from it. Move from it. And you will see that the world has no choice but to catch up with the inner picture you've chosen to make real. There is no power outside of consciousness. The world is not happening to you. It is flowing from you, from your dominant images, from your persistent feelings, from your assumptions about what is possible. So assume wisely, imagine faithfully, feel deeply, and trust completely. For what you see within is not illusion. It is creation in progress. Peace is not something to be found. It is something to be remembered. It already exists within you, waiting to be uncovered the moment you stop resisting. What is in the silence between your thoughts, in the stillness beyond the noise of worry, there is peace. But it is not the peace that the world gives, conditioned by circumstance or external validation. It is the peace that comes from knowing that life is not random. It is ordered. It is intelligent. It is flowing from a higher mind, and that mind is not distant from you. It is you. The one who learns to dwell in this inner peace becomes a master over the outer world. It does not mean there will never be storms. It means you will not be moved by them. You may walk through valleys, but you will not be shaken. Why? Because you know that the storm has no power over the one who is anchored within. You know that appearances do not define truth. You have learned to rest while the world rushes, to be still while others panic, to smile when nothing seems to be working, because your peace is not based on what you see, but on what you know. Worry is always born from the illusion that something is missing, that something has gone wrong, that you are not where you are supposed to be. But nothing is missing. Even delays are divine. Even the detours are orchestrated. Even your so-called setbacks are leading you forward. When you understand this, peace becomes your natural state. You stop fighting the moment. You stop trying to escape what is, and instead begin to cooperate with it. You see the invisible hand guiding your path, and you walk with quiet confidence. To choose peace is to step outside the limitations of your old self. It is to renounce the constant need to control, to predict, to force. It is to release the lie that says, if I don't worry, things will fall apart. Peace is not passivity, it is power under control. It is the calm assurance that what you have committed to in consciousness is already working itself out in form. It is the recognition that the outer world does not need to change first for you to feel peace. You feel peace first, and then the outer world reflects it back to you. This peace is not born from logic. It is born from spiritual awareness. It comes when you realize that you are not separate from God, from the divine intelligence, from the source of life itself. When you know this deeply, not as theory but as experience, you stop reacting to life and start responding from a deeper place. You stop asking, what should I do, and begin affirming all is well. And from that place of peace, clarity comes, direction comes, inspiration flows. You are no longer acting from fear, but from alignment. Many are seeking peace through external change, a new job, a healed body, a resolved relationship. But lasting peace never comes from conditions. It comes from the state you choose to dwell in. You must first be peaceful in the unseen, in the in-between, in the unformed. You must carry peace into your imagination, into your assumptions, into your conversations with yourself. Peace must become your new emotional home. And when it does, everything in your life will begin to mirror that peace. You cannot carry peace and fear at the same time. You must choose which voice to listen to. Fear says, it's too late. Peace says, it's right on time. Fear says, what if it doesn't work out? Peace says, it already has. Fear tries to protect you by imagining all the ways you might suffer. Peace protects you by reminding you that nothing real can be lost, and nothing unreal can be threatened. When you choose peace, you are choosing to believe in a higher reality than the one your senses present to you. There is great wisdom in silence. When you no longer react, when you no longer defend, when you no longer argue with life, you make room for grace to enter. You make room for solutions to rise. You make room for the subtle nudges of spirit to guide you. The noise of worry drowns out divine instruction. But peace is a listening posture. It says, I don't have to know everything. I only have to be still enough to hear what is mine to know. In that stillness, wisdom comes, not through effort, but through surrender. You begin to see life differently when peace becomes your lens. You no longer judge what happens as good or bad. You no longer resist the process. You begin to trust that even when things fall apart, they are falling into place. That even when doors close, they are redirecting you to something better. You walk slower. You breathe deeper. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You become like the tree planted by the river, unmoved by the wind, grounded in knowing. The great illusion is that peace is a reward for getting everything right. But peace is the soil from which right action grows. You must begin with peace, not wait for it. You must become still within before the outer chaos subsides. This is how you stop living in reaction and start living in creation. You claim peace, not because everything is perfect, but because you know the truth. You are always held, always led, always enough. Nothing outside you can disturb your peace unless you grant it permission. Living in the end means assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled and staying there, not occasionally, not when it's convenient, but as a way of life. It means moving your awareness into the reality where what you desire has already come to pass. You stop hoping and you begin knowing. You stop asking and you begin assuming. You no longer try to get there, you go there in consciousness, and from there you live, speak, and act. The end is not a far-off point in time. It is a state of consciousness, and you can enter that state right now. You don't have to wait for evidence. You don't have to wait for permission. You only have to make a decision. This is who I am now. This is what I have now. This is where I live now. And from that decision, you dwell in the new state, not as a guest, but as a resident. You stop visiting your desire. You take up residence in it. When you live in the end, you are not trying to become something. You are it. You are no longer seeking love, wealth, healing, or peace. You are the embodiment of those things. And because you have assumed that identity, the world reflects it back to you. It must. It has no choice. The world is a mirror, and it mirrors the state you consistently occupy. So when you live in the end, you make the end your starting point, and everything in your life begins to organize itself to match that internal reality. But to live in the end requires discipline, not of effort, but of attention. You must watch where your mind goes. You must notice when it slips back into the old state, into fear, lack, or doubt, and you must gently return it to the end, over and over again, until that state becomes your new normal. This is not repression, it is creation. You are not pretending. You are selecting the version of reality you choose to dwell in. You are choosing the inner landscape that will become your outer experience. Most people live in the middle. They start with a desire, then spend all their time in the how, the when, the why. They live in the gap between the wish and its fulfillment, and that gap is filled with frustration, doubt, and impatience. But you were never meant to live in the middle. You were meant to begin at the end, to live from the completed picture, to carry the tone of the answered prayer before it arrives. That is the secret. To live as though it has already happened. And when you do, it must happen. Living in the end makes you magnetic. You become the one who already has, and the one who has is never desperate, never in lack, never chasing. The one who has is still grateful, assured, and that assurance draws everything to it. You do not chase what you already are. You attract it by being it. You stop asking when will it come, and start saying it is already mine. That shift collapses time. It removes delay. It brings the unseen into the seen. You may ask, how can I live in the end when everything around me says otherwise? But the outer world is always a reflection of yesterday's assumptions. You do not need it to change first. You only need to persist in the new state, and the world will catch up. Your job is not to argue with appearances, but to remain loyal to the end. Your job is not to fight the old, but to feel the new. And feeling is everything. What you feel consistently becomes your life. To live in the end is to remember that you are the cause, not the effect. You are the author, not the victim. You are the scriptwriter, not the actor bound by lines written by someone else. You decide the outcome, and then you move your attention to that outcome and make it real within. Not one day, not someday. Now. The now moment is the only place where creation happens. And when you occupy that now with the energy of fulfillment, the world reshapes itself accordingly. There is no power in waiting. The power is in assuming now. The end is not a destination you reach. It is a reality you enter and inhabit, and once you inhabit it, everything that doesn't match that reality begins to dissolve. Old patterns fall away. Old stories lose their grip. Old circumstances begin to shift. Why? Because you have shifted. And when you shift, life shifts. Not because the world changed, but because you changed your position in consciousness. So stop chasing, stop waiting, stop begging, and start assuming. Assume the identity of the one who already has. Assume the feeling of the one who already is. Live from that place, walk from that place, speak from that place, and the world will bow to your assumption. For it is not the outer world that determines your state, it is your state that determines the outer world. And when you choose to live in the end becomes inevitable. The moment you let go of needing to know how it will happen, you open the door for it to happen in ways you could never imagine. The mind is conditioned to believe that it must figure out every detail, that it must map the path from desire to fulfillment, but there is a greater intelligence within you, an unseen current that already knows the way. And the moment you release your grip on the need to control, that current begins to flow. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means giving over. It means surrendering your limited strategies for the infinite wisdom that dwells within your own being. It means trusting that once you have imagined it, once you have felt it, once you have accepted it as real in your consciousness, the way to it is already prepared. The bridges of incident are already set in motion. The characters you need to meet, the events that must unfold, the circumstances that will lead you there, they are already moving toward you, silently without effort on your part. But as long as you cling to the how, you interfere with the process. As long as you obsess over the details, you signal to your deeper self that you do not truly believe it is done. You may say, I trust, but your anxiety over the timing and method betrays your words. Real trust is silent. It is still. It rests. It no longer asks. It knows. And because it knows, it lets go. You let go of the need to see it now, because you understand that all things come forth in divine timing. You let go of needing others to validate your vision, because you know that no one else needs to see it for it to be real. You let go of doubt, not by forcing yourself to be positive, but by shifting your focus from the outer to the inner. You go back to the feeling, you go back to the knowing. You remind yourself that you did not imagine in vain. You remind yourself that the act of imagining is the act of creation, and creation is complete the moment it is conceived. There is nothing more liberating than realizing you do not have to make it happen. You only have to allow it to happen. You allow by becoming receptive. You become receptive by aligning yourself with the state in which your desire is already fulfilled. And you stay there, not because you see evidence, but because you have decided to trust your inner reality over appearances. And the longer you remain in that state, the more you dissolve resistance. The more you let go of effort, the more you enter flow. The natural tendency of the old mind is to worry, to analyze, to calculate. But the deeper you go into awareness, the more you realize that none of that is necessary. The mind may scream, but what about this? What if it doesn't happen? What if I fail? And you simply return to stillness. You return to the truth that you are not alone in this. You are not creating by force. You are allowing by faith. And that faith is not blind. It is based on your inner experience. It is based on your decision to dwell in the end. There is a subtle but profound shift that happens when you let go. You stop pushing. You stop trying to make things happen through human effort alone. You rest in the knowing that what is meant for you is already yours. And that knowing magnetizes it to you, not through striving, but through surrender. Not through performance, but through presence. You no longer carry the weight of your future. You trust that it is unfolding perfectly, and that trust becomes your peace. Letting go is not passive. It is deeply active in the invisible realms. It is the choice to remain loyal to the unseen. It is the decision to abide in the vibration of fulfillment even when nothing around you reflects it. It is the power of becoming empty, so that life can pour into you the form your imagination has constructed. The one who lets go becomes like the open hand. Nothing is forced and nothing is blocked. Life flows through the open hand. Life responds to the one who trusts. You begin to realize that it's not your job to carry the how. Your only job is to carry the feeling, the assumption, the end state. That is your offering to the divine within you. You say, here is the version of reality I choose to live in. And the divine responds, not to your words, but to your vibration. It arranges circumstances, people and moments to reflect back what you have already accepted as true. And so you no longer chase. You no longer beg. You no longer argue with appearances. You simply return to the silence within. You go back to the imaginal act. You go back to the inner state where it is already done. And then you release. Not because you are indifferent, but because you are certain. And that certainty is what moves mountains. Once you let go, you begin to notice signs. Not because you are searching for them, but because you are aligned with the state where they naturally appear. You begin to feel supported. You begin to feel guided. You begin to walk with ease, knowing that your path is blessed. You act when inspired and rest when not. You stop measuring progress with your eyes and start measuring it with your peace. If peace is present, you are on track. If tension rises, you return to stillness. And over time, you notice something miraculous. Things begin to unfold without your interference. What once felt hard now feels light. What once seemed impossible now happens without effort. Why? Because you stopped trying to do what only trust could do. You stopped carrying the burden, and you let the divine intelligence within you take over. That intelligence knows what to do, when to do it, and how to do it in the most effortless, elegant way. So you make letting go your way of life. You hold the vision, you feel the end, and then you release. Again and again, you return to that posture of surrender. And in that surrender, you discover freedom. You discover that life works not when you control it, but when you align with it. When you begin to act from faith, rather than fear, everything changes. Faith acts with assurance. It does not wait for evidence. It creates it. It does not beg for signs. It becomes the sign. To act from faith is to live as though it is already done. It is to walk into the room with the confidence of one who knows they are already chosen. It is to speak with the tone of one who already has what they desire. Not because they are faking it, but because they are anchored in an inner knowing, deeper than the senses. Faith is not blind. Faith sees what the eyes cannot. It perceives the unseen, and it dares to call it real. It does not waver when conditions contradict the vision. It does not collapse under the weight of delay. Faith says, though I do not yet see it, I know it is mine, and from that knowing, action flows. Not action to prove, not action to earn, but action to align. Acting from faith means your behavior begins to match your assumption. If you believe yourself to be abundant, you walk in generosity. If you see yourself as healed, you carry the energy of vitality. If you see yourself as loved, you respond with openness. You are not pretending. You are embodying. You are not performing. You are participating in the reality you have already claimed. Fear always acts from survival. It says, I must do this or I will lose. Faith acts from creation. It says, because I am this, I do this. And there is a world of difference between the two. When you act from fear, you are reinforcing the state you are trying to escape. When you act from faith, you are strengthening the state you have chosen to live in. One leads to exhaustion, the other leads to expansion. Faith does not require perfection. It only requires persistence. It means returning again and again to the truth of who you are. When doubts arise, and they will, you do not fight them. You simply shift. You remember. You return to the state of the wish fulfilled, and you let that state guide your steps. You begin to trust the nudges. You begin to follow intuition. You stop second-guessing every move, because you know that when you dwell in the right state, the right actions follow. The actions taken from faith feel light. They feel inspired. They are often simple, even small, but they open doors. They create movement. They initiate the unfolding of your desire in time and space. You may be led to call someone, to send an email, to apply for something, to go somewhere unexpected. And as you obey those small prompts, you realize that each step is part of a larger orchestration that your conscious mind could never have arranged. This is the dance between inner and outer. You feel the end, you dwell in it, and then you act in accordance with it. Not to make it happen, but because it already has. You do not wait for the external to confirm your state. You express your state into the external. You become the cause, and the world becomes your echo. Even when nothing seems to be changing, faith keeps you steady. You know that just as a seed takes time to break through the soil, your inner work is germinating. You know that what you have assumed will come forth not through effort, but through resonance. And so you act not out of desperation, but out of alignment. You do what feels natural in the state of the wish fulfilled. You live from the end, and life responds. To act from faith is to honor your imagination as truth. It is to treat your inner world with reverence. It is to move through the world as if what you desire is already fact. And in doing so, you draw that fact into form. Your movement becomes your magnet. Your decisions become declarations. Your life becomes a mirror of the state you have chosen to embody. And this is how manifestation becomes effortless. Not because you did nothing, but because you acted from the right state. You lived from fulfillment rather than lack. You took steps not to get something, but to express who you already are. That is the difference. That is the power. And when you master this, there is nothing you cannot be, do, or have. For the one who acts from faith is never acting alone. In the end, the journey to stop worrying and truly trust is a journey inward, a surrender to the infinite wisdom and power that already reside within you. It is a commitment to live not by what the eyes see or the mind fears, but by what the heart knows and the imagination feels. When you release control over the how and the when you let go and let the divine flow through you, you open yourself to a life of ease, grace, and fulfillment. Acting from faith, anchored in the certainty of your fulfilled desire, transforms every step into an expression of your inner truth. Trust is not passive. It is the highest form of power, power that moves mountains, shifts realities, and draws to you all that you have imagined. This trust is your peace, your freedom, your creative force. And with it you become unstoppable. You do not move doors by effort. You move them by knowing. The door swings open the moment you assume the state of already having walked through it. The world may say, it's impossible, but the world is merely the echo of yesterday's beliefs. It cannot bind what God has already loosed. It cannot close what God has opened within you. There is no need to force anything. The door is not held shut by man's opinion, by circumstance, or by delay. It is only your own consciousness that opens or shuts it. If you feel yourself to be unworthy, the door remains closed. Not by judgment, but by your own refusal to see yourself as God sees you. But when you rise in awareness, when you say inwardly, I am already what I long to be, then the door appears. And not only appears, but swings open in a way that confounds reason. You are not waiting on the door. The door is waiting on you, waiting on your recognition, your identification, your willingness to feel the reality of what is unseen. And when you do, you will find that no one, no system, no limitation, no voice of doubt can close what has been opened in spirit. God does not consult the opinions of others to open a path for you. It is done in silence, in stillness, in the hidden chamber of your own being. Others may not understand it. They may wonder how, or why, or through whom, but you will know. You will know that it was not by might, not by power, but by the inner awareness of I am. Assumption opens doors. This truth, so simple and yet so profound, is the cornerstone of all transformation. When you assume something to be real, you are not merely imagining it as a hopeful fantasy. You are placing yourself in the state of fulfillment. You are stepping into the dimension where that reality already exists. It is not a matter of hoping or wishing. It is a matter of knowing and living from the end. The assumption is the act of faith, the movement of inner being toward what is already yours in spirit. And once you make that assumption and abide in it, the outer world must conform. It has no choice. It is clay in the hands of the potter, and your inner state is the potter. The world you see is not fixed, it is fluid. It is not permanent, it is shaped and reshaped by your thoughts, your feelings, and above all, your assumptions. Whatever you accept as true of yourself begins to manifest in your experience. So when you assume that the door is open, you are not waiting for a sign, you are creating the sign. You are generating the movement. You are activating the invisible power of God within you. You are becoming the living testimony of the unseen law that governs all things. To assume is to trust the unseen more than the seen. It is to believe in the invisible structure of reality more than the shifting sands of circumstance. And yet that is the great challenge, because the senses scream for evidence. The mind demands proof. The world whispers, wait and see. But the spirit knows. Believe and you will see. The assumption precedes the fact. The inner act creates the outer result. What you assume becomes your atmosphere. It surrounds you. It radiates from you. It becomes the field through which all things filter. You cannot hold an assumption and not see its reflection. Eventually, in the mirror of your life, some reflections may be instant. Others may take time. But time is irrelevant to the law. Time is merely the unfolding of what is already done in the invisible. And so, assume the best. Assume the door is not just open, but welcoming. Assume the path is already prepared, the answer already sent, the way already cleared. Let that assumption fill your mind in the quiet moments. Let it walk with you, speak through you, breathe in you, become the embodiment of that reality. Don't wait for confirmation, be the confirmation. The moment you do, you will feel the shift. The calm confidence will settle in. A sense of ease will arise. You will stop striving because you will know it is already done. Heed. When you walk by inner sight, your confidence is not rooted in outcomes but in identity. You are not swayed by results. You are led by revelation. You know who you are, and from that knowing you see what is yours. You see the door open not because it is honed yet in the physical, but because you have seen it so clearly within that. You cannot be denied. That vision becomes your compass, your anchor, your source of peace. And what happens when you live this way? Reality bends, people appear, opportunities align, coincidences increase. But these are not signs to start believing. They are results of your believing. You don't believe because things happen. Things happen because you believe. You don't wait to see before you accept. You accept and then you see. So continue to lift your inner sight above outer evidence. Continue to walk through the doors you see in spirit, even if the hallway is still dark. Trust that what is formed within will take form without. Know that your faith is never wasted. The seed of vision will grow. The dream, when nurtured by inner sight, will become substance. The invisible will become visible. And the door once imagined as open will soon be open in truth. And so, beloved, let this truth settle into your spirit. The door is already open, not by man's permission, but by divine authority. Not because of striving, but because you dared to believe. Your assumption has power. Your vision is sacred. Your inner agreement with the promise is the key that no hand can remove. Walk not by what you see, but by who you know yourself to be in spirit. For when you remain faithful to the end you have seen, the world must reshape itself to match your inner reality. Delay is not defeat. Rejection is not final, and the no of man cannot silence the yes of God. Keep walking, keep knowing, keep becoming. The door stands open, and no man can shut it. You are standing at the edge of something new, something unseen by the eyes, yet deeply known by the Spirit. It calls you not with noise, but with the still sacred pull of inner knowing. This is not the end. It is the beginning of the new thing God is doing in your life. And to step into it, you must first step within. Close the door to appearances. The senses may say nothing is changing. The world may echo delay, discouragement, defeat. But you were never meant to live by sight. You were meant to live by vision, inner vision, for what is not yet seen is more real than what is seen. If you dare to believe. Right now within you, God is working, in secret, quietly, perfectly. The shift has already occurred. The moment you desired, the moment you prayed, the seed was planted. The moment you imagined it and felt its reality, the harvest began. But like all things divine, it unfolds not by striving, but by assuming it is done. This is your time to agree with God. Not with the problem, not with the delay, but with the promise. Say yes to the new. Say yes to the healing, the promotion, the open door, the divine connection. Not with your lips alone, but with your state of being. Move from the old thought, the old pattern, the old identity. You are not who you were. You are becoming what you've dared to accept in your imagination. Feel it now, the breakthrough, the release, the answered prayer. Let it live in you so completely that you need no evidence from the world to be persuaded. Be persuaded by the word implanted in your heart, the word that says, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? Yes, you do. You perceive it now, not with your eyes, but with your spirit. And so you pray, not begging, not pleading, but thanking. Thanking the God who heard you before you called. Thanking the power within you that knows no limits. Thanking the source that has already made the way straight, the mountains low, the valleys lifted. The prayer of breakthrough is not a cry for something far off. It is the recognition of what is here now. It is the assumption that what you have asked has been given. Step into it, not by waiting, but by walking. Walk in the joy of it. Walk in the strength of it. Walk in the certainty that it is finished. And as you do, the outer world will echo your inner world. Doors will open, ways will clear, favor will find you, and what was once withheld will rush in like a flood. This is your moment, not tomorrow. Now, step into the new thing. It is already yours. There is a place within you where all truth is already known. Though it may seem hidden beneath layers of fear, logic and worldly noise. That place is not distant. It is not a mountain to climb or a riddle to solve. It is the stillness within, the deep divine core of you that is never confused, never shaken, never uncertain. It is your connection to God, the eternal source of all creation. And in this place, something sacred happens. You begin to feel before you see. You begin to know before you understand. This is the foundation of real change. Not change born from force or effort, but change born from alignment with what already is in the unseen. To walk into the new thing God is doing in your life, you must first recognize that your outer world is always trailing behind your inner awareness. You are not waiting for a breakthrough to appear so you can believe. You are being invited to believe. So fully, so completely, so faithfully that the breakthrough must appear. It is not the event that gives you permission to feel free, joyful, loved, or chosen. It is the assumption of that feeling now that calls the event into existence. Every true transformation begins not with an action, but with a shift in perception. You begin to see through the lens of the Spirit. Not just what is, but what can be, what must be, because you have seen it clearly within. Inner knowing is not a mental exercise. It is a spiritual unveiling. It is the moment when you no longer ask if it will happen, but begin to walk as though it already has. This inner shift is the evidence of the new beginning. God whispers in the quiet place. The answers you seek are not somewhere out there. They are not waiting in the approval of others, in the unfolding of circumstances, or in the ticking of time. They are within you, calling you to return to your first knowing, to that moment when the vision was planted, the desire ignited, and something in you said, "This is mine." Not in arrogance, not in ego, but in spiritual agreement with what God already placed in your heart. You do not need to strive to make it happen. You do not need to manipulate people, or force doors open, or chase what seems far away. You need only to agree with the truth that has already been revealed within. That knowing, when honored, becomes the creative power of your life. It begins to move through your words, your posture, your expectations. It radiates in your atmosphere. And without striving, without struggle, you draw into your life exactly what matches that inner conviction. When the world says not yet, but your spirit says now, you must choose where to place your faith. You must decide which voice you will trust. And if you can silence the noise even for a moment and return to that deep sense of knowing, you will realize it has already begun. God is already making the way. What looked like delay was preparation. What felt like a closed door was a divine redirection. What seemed like silence was the echo of God's voice inviting you to listen deeper. Not with your ears, but with your spirit. The moment you stop arguing with reality and start aligning with divine truth, everything changes. It doesn't require time. It requires realization. And in a moment of realization, the entire trajectory of your life can shift. What once felt impossible becomes inevitable. Because you've seen it within, and the outer world must conform to the inner image, held with unwavering faith. This is the mystery and the miracle. The world moves not by chance, but by consciousness. And when you dwell in the awareness of what God is doing within you, you no longer panic in the waiting, or beg for signs, or question your worthiness. You rest, you know. You walk as one who possesses the promise, because you do. And so, you stop trying to get something to happen and begin to embody what has already happened in spirit. You smile when there's no reason to. You prepare when others say it's foolish. You bless what hasn't yet arrived, because in your spirit, it already has. This is not pretending. This is prophetic living. It is stepping into what has been revealed within, long before it manifests without. The world will try to talk you out of it. The facts will try to contradict it. But you were never called to build your life on facts. You were called to build on truth, and truth is higher than facts. Truth is eternal. Facts are temporary. What you know within you, deeply, clearly, boldly, is the seed of a new creation, waiting for your agreement. Faith is not blind. Faith sees more clearly than the senses ever could. It sees beyond the noise, beyond the current conditions, beyond the limitations. And it says, I trust the God within me more than I trust the world around me. I trust the vision I've been given more than the reality I've inherited. And in that trust, the old must dissolve, the new must rise, the breakthrough must come. That to live this way, you must release your addiction to appearances. You must surrender your obsession with how it will happen, when it will happen, and what others think about your process. The question is not how it will unfold. The question is, do you believe it already has? Because once you do, everything must align with that belief. The new thing God is doing is not waiting for conditions to change. It is waiting for you to say yes in your spirit. To say yes without needing permission. Yes without needing proof. Yes without needing applause or understanding. Just yes. That yes spoken from the place of inner knowing carries power. Creative power. Resurrecting power. It tells the universe that you have remembered who you are and what is yours by divine right. And so, you return again and again to that sacred space within. Not to strive, but to remember. Not to plead, but to receive. Not to question, but to accept. And in that acceptance, you begin to live not from desire, but from fulfillment. You no longer walk as one seeking, but as one possessing. And because you possess it in spirit, it must come forth in time. You live by vision, not by sight. Sight is what the natural man relies on. It is the surface. It is the ever-changing appearance of things. But vision is what the Spirit gives you. Vision sees what cannot yet be touched, yet knows it is real. Vision holds the end in mind, even in the midst of a storm. Vision says, I see the promise, not the problem. And when you live by vision, you rise above the noise of circumstances and anchor yourself in divine certainty. To live by sight is to be tossed by every report, every delay, every disappointment. But to live by vision is to say, none of these things move me, because your movement is not governed by conditions. It is governed by conviction. You are no longer reactive, you are prophetic. You speak the end from the beginning, and live as if it is so, even when nothing around you supports it. That is the secret. That is the sacred path. That is how you step into the new thing God is doing. The world may call it foolish, but heaven calls it faith. The mind may say, wait until it happens, but the Spirit says, rejoice because it already has. The eyes may see lack, the heart may feel doubt, but the vision within says, this is your season, this is your time, this is your moment to step into what was promised. Not by force, but by faith. Not by effort, but by embodiment. You do not need the world to catch up before you believe. You need only to believe so completely that the world must catch up. You are the cause. The outer is the effect. You are the light. The world reflects your inner radiance. And when you live by this light, nothing can stop what is unfolding. For you, not delay, not fear, not even failure. So you practice seeing beyond what is. You imagine the life already transformed. You speak not of what you lack, but of what you have. You worship not for what you hope will happen, but for what you know is already yours. You don't just believe in breakthrough, you become it. You carry the energy of answered prayer. You embody the mood of fulfillment. You radiate the presence of one who has received. And this inner transformation becomes the magnet for outer demonstration. Without force, without begging, without bargaining. Just vision, pure, holy, creative vision. The kind that moves mountains, parts seas, and reorders reality. The kind that shifts atmospheres and summons miracles. The kind that says, I no longer live by what I see. I live by what I know. And what you know is this. God is doing a new thing. Not tomorrow, not someday. Now. It springs forth in your spirit before it ever touches your hands. And the more real it becomes within you, the more irresistible it becomes in the world around you. You live not by what the world shows you, but by what God has revealed in you. And what has been revealed is holy. It is finished. It is yours. In the quiet spaces of your life, where no one sees and no one claps, God is working, not in chaos, not in panic, but in order, in perfect divine order. The mistake many make is to equate silence with absence, delay with denial, or invisibility with inactivity. But the Spirit knows better. The Spirit understands that the most profound works of God happen in secret, in silence, in stillness. Before the manifestation, there is a mystery, and that mystery is the working of God within you and around you. You must learn to honor what you cannot see. You must learn to trust the invisible process of creation. knowing that even when there is no sign of movement, divine activity is underway. The seed does not sprout the moment it is buried. The roots move deep before the fruit ever shows. And just like that seed, your prayer, your desire, your vision has already been sown into the eternal soil of God's promise. It is working even now. There are seasons of becoming, sacred stretches of time, where nothing seems to change on the outside, yet everything is shifting on the inside. These are not wasted seasons. These are the wombs of destiny, where your spirit is being prepared to carry the magnitude of what you asked for. You may not see the change yet, but you are being changed. You are being expanded to hold what you were once unprepared to receive. And in that unseen transformation, God is shaping you for the very breakthrough your heart longs for. But you must not despise the unseen. You must not curse the silence. God's greatest miracles begin beneath the surface. While you are sleeping, He is arranging. While you are worshiping, He is shifting. While you are obeying in small things, He is positioning you for the big things. The unseen is where faith is refined, where vision is clarified, where trust becomes unshakable. The unseen is holy. It is the hidden place of divine formation. And so you begin to live with a new confidence, not because everything around you has changed, but because you know that God is never still. He is always moving, always speaking, always aligning details for your good. Even delays become divine, even detours become direction. Even the no becomes a not yet that hides a better yes. Every detail is working for you, even when it seems to be working against you. God hides His work, not to frustrate you, but to invite you deeper, deeper into trust, deeper into communion, deeper into stillness, where your faith no longer depends on what you can touch or prove. The unseen becomes your altar. The silence becomes your sanctuary. And from that place you begin to recognize that the breakthrough doesn't begin when things change. It begins the moment you believe it is already done. The moment you assume it is done, you come into agreement with divine order, not because you figured it out, but because you've surrendered the need to. You recognize that God's timeline does not obey your schedule, but it always obeys your faith. The assumption that it is done doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from intimacy. It is the product of knowing that what God has spoken in your spirit is truer than what your eyes have yet seen. You no longer beg. You no longer plead. You no longer try to earn what has already been freely given. Instead, you rise in your spirit. You ascend to the end of the thing. You dwell in the completion of the prayer, not the process. You speak from the place of it is finished, not from the desperation of will it ever come. Because to assume it is done is to take possession of what has always been yours by divine inheritance. The world teaches you to wait for evidence, but the Spirit teaches you to become the evidence, to embody the result before it appears, to feel the end before it begins, to speak the word before you see the manifestation. This is not wishful thinking. It is spiritual law. You are not waiting on God to move. God is waiting on you to agree. Assume the prayer is already answered and everything around you begins to respond. Your energy shifts. Your posture changes. You pray differently. You speak differently. You walk with the confidence of one who has touched the unseen and brought it into the now. That assumption is not passive. It is not denial of the facts. It is the declaration of truth that overrides the facts. It says, I have seen the end and I choose to live from it. You are no longer ruled by hope that wavers. You are ruled by knowing. And from that knowing, you bless the unseen. You bless the process. You bless even the pain, because you understand that nothing can delay what has already been decided in heaven. The assumption is your point of contact with the divine. It is your yes in the spirit. It is the open door through which the breakthrough rushes in. And what is assumption but a spiritual alignment? It is the settling of the heart that says, this is mine. I receive it now. I will act as though it is done. Because in the realm that matters, it is done. You don't need to see it to know it. You need only to rest in the awareness that every promise is yes and amen. And if it is yes in heaven, it must become yes in earth through your agreement. Agreement doesn't come through worry. It doesn't come through repetition. It comes through rest. You stop striving. You stop rehearsing the how. You stop questioning whether it will work out. And you begin to feel the end. You begin to taste it in your imagination, see it in your mind's eye, celebrate it in your heart, That celebration is a seed. That feeling is a blueprint. And the more you dwell in that end, the more the beginning begins to shift. You do not receive based on how loudly you cry or how long you wait. You receive based on how fully you align. And alignment is not performance. It is embodiment. It is spiritual posture. It is becoming the thing you desire before the world confirms it. The moment you say in your spirit, "It is mine," and hold that posture, you become a living magnet for what you've already received within. Assumption is not about convincing God. It is about convincing yourself that you are one with the promise, that the thing you seek is not separate from you. It is within you. It is you. It is part of your divine design. And because it is within, you no longer chase it. You awaken to it. You no longer fear the future. You step into the finished work. When you assume it is done, every step you take is guided. Every word you speak is prophetic. Every door you walk through is confirmation of what you already knew in spirit. The confusion begins to lift. The fear begins to dissolve. And in its place, peace takes root. Confidence rises. Clarity returns. Because the war is no longer outside you. It has been won within you. And the moment the battle is won inside, the outside must shift. The storm may still rage, but you walk on water. The delay may persist, but you live as though the promise is present. And because you live that way, the world bends. It responds. It opens. It reflects back to you what you dared to claim in the unseen. Assuming it is done is not delusion. It is dominion. It is taking your rightful place as one who co-creates with God. It is stepping into the divine pattern where imagination is not fantasy, but the first phase of fulfillment. You see it, feel it, know it, and then without effort, it must appear. The world must mirror your inner conviction. So you stop asking when, you stop asking how. You start thanking. You give thanks before the phone call, before the healing, before the open door. You thank God not for what you hope to receive, but for what you have already received in spirit. And that gratitude becomes power. That praise becomes substance. That thanksgiving becomes proof that you are no longer trying to get, you have already got it. And because you've got it, you walk differently. You think differently. You treat people differently. You plan, prepare, and participate in life from a state of fulfillment, not frustration. You act like the healed. You talk like the favorite. You live like the chosen. And the world, unable to resist the authority of your assumption, must obey. The prayer has been answered. The vision has been fulfilled. Not in the realm of appearances, but in the realm of the eternal. Your job is not to force the outer to change. Your job is to remain faithful to the inner truth, to continue assuming, believing, resting, and rejoicing. The rest will unfold on its own. You've already won. You've already received. You've already crossed into the new. And because of that, you no longer watch the clock. You no longer compare your life to others. You no longer waver between belief and doubt. You stand rooted in the invisible, anchored in the unseen, assured of the answer. And as you do, the world yields to your faith. Not because you waited perfectly, but because you believed deeply. Not because you understood it all, but because you trusted the one who does. You no longer pray from lack. You pray from possession. You no longer imagine from longing. You imagine from fulfillment. You no longer live to prove something. You live to embody something. And what you embody becomes your experience, not by effort, but by alignment. Not by striving, but by assuming. It is done. It is now. It is mine. There is a sacred courage required to walk away from the familiar. Even when the familiar is uncomfortable, painful, or unfruitful, there is a strange attachment we form with what we have grown used to. The mind clings to patterns. The body memorizes habits. The heart recycles old emotions. But when God begins to stir something new within you, He also begins to loosen your grip on what no longer serves your divine evolution. You feel it first as a subtle unrest, a spiritual dissonance with your current environment. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, like the feeling that you're growing out of something, a place, a relationship, a way of thinking, a rhythm that once worked for you now feels constraining. You are not being punished. You are being prompted. Something deeper, is calling you forward, asking you to surrender what you have settled for in order to make room for what has already been prepared. You cannot enter the new thing while gripping the old. One must give way to the other. God does not pour fresh wine into old skins, not because he is unwilling, but because it would destroy both. The vessel must be renewed to carry the new oil. So when he begins to shake you loose from the old patterns, do not resist. Do not mourn what you're being asked to release. Your obedience to let go is not a loss. It is alignment. Letting go is not about abandoning everything. It is about detaching from what you have falsely identified as your source. You thought the job was your provision. You thought the person was your anchor. You thought the title was your worth. But God in his mercy allows those false securities to crack, not to destroy you, but to reveal the only true source, the divine presence within you. And in that revelation, you awaken to your real power. The power to choose again, to see differently, to walk away without bitterness, to release without regret. What no longer reflects the truth of who you are becoming must be laid down so that you can pick up what belongs to your higher self. The discomfort of transition is holy. It is not the enemy. It is the voice of God guiding you out of the wilderness and into promise. But you must be willing to travel light. You must be willing to shed the old stories, the outdated self-concepts, the inherited beliefs that kept you small. The version of you that survived the last season is not the one called to thrive in this one. It is time to release the illusion of safety in stagnation. That false security has delayed your expansion long enough. The fear of the unknown is not greater than the faithfulness of your Creator. He who called you out will sustain you through, but you must obey. You must move when he moves. You must stop rehearsing what was and start embodying what is becoming. There is glory in the release, freedom in the surrender, joy in the obedience, because what feels like an ending is really a beginning. The end of striving and the start of flowing, the end of coping and the start of thriving. But you cannot take the baggage of the old into the beauty of the new. You must drop it, grieve it if you must, but let it go. The shift you seek will not occur while you are still bowing to what God has already closed. He closed it not to deprive you, but to redirect you, not to harm you, but to heal you. And healing sometimes comes through separation from what you once called home, from what you once called normal. But there is a higher home waiting, a new normal already established in spirit, waiting for your agreement. So when the prompting comes, obey. When the doors close, bless them. When the path becomes narrow, trust it. For this is how you walk into the new, not with resistance, but with surrender. Not with fear, but with faith. Not by dragging the old forward, but by stepping cleanly into the now. And from that place of release, you begin to receive, because release creates room. Room for revelation, room for clarity, room for divine alignment. You were never meant to carry the old and the new together. God is doing something unprecedented, but you must unclench your fist to receive it. The blessing is too big for your old frame, the promise too wide for your previous limitations. It is in the moment of letting go that you rise. You rise into your identity. You rise into the atmosphere where all things are possible, because you have become available. And availability is the language of divine miracles. When you say yes to the unknown, you say yes to God. And now in this availability, you do something radical. You dare to see yourself in the place you've never been. You dare to see yourself beyond the boundaries of past experience. You allow imagination to become your prayer, not a begging but a becoming, not a longing but a living. You dwell in the end of the thing before it appears, because that is the truest place to live in the finished work. When you see yourself there, something happens. Heaven responds, creation realigns. What you see internally becomes the instruction for what must unfold externally. You are not imagining for the sake of escape. You are imagining to align with truth, to rehearse the reality that already exists in spirit. You don't see it to make it happen. You see it because it has already happened. Your seeing is an act of faith. It is not fantasy. It is participation in the divine process of calling things that are not as though they were. You become the answer to your own prayer by choosing to see the answer in advance, by choosing to dwell in the feeling of it fulfilled, long before there is any sign to support it. And in that place, your assumption becomes atmosphere. You carry the end result as a vibration, and the world responds accordingly. Doors open. Resources show up. Conversations confirm. Signs follow. Not because you begged for them, but because you lived as though the promise was already true. Seeing yourself there changes how you speak. You begin to speak as one who has already arrived. Not out of pride, but out of power. You declare what is true before the facts catch up. You say, I am healed. Not because your body feels it, but because your spirit already knows it. You say, I am provided for. Not because the bank account reflects it, but because the source within you is eternal and unlimited. The world may not understand it, but you are not waiting for their understanding. You are building from the inside out. You are walking by inner sight. You are creating from divine blueprint. And what you hold in that blueprint, vividly, consistently, faithfully, must come to pass. You make no more room for doubt. Doubt is not humility. Doubt is a denial of the divine intelligence working in and through you. You no longer try to justify your dream to those who can't see it. You no longer reduce your vision to fit the comfort of others. You live boldly. You live fully. You live as one who has seen, and because you've seen it, it must be. You now understand that the act of seeing is the act of receiving. The more real it becomes in you, the faster it appears around you. This is not magic. This is law. This is alignment. This is the creative nature of your being. God created you to create, and your first tool of creation is vision. See it again. See it clearly. See it until it becomes normal. See it until you no longer hope for it. You expect it. See it until it is no longer a distant goal, but a current identity. That shift in seeing is the shift in being, and that shift in being is what shifts your world. So now, live from the outcome. Speak from the end. Love from the fullness. Give from the overflow. Decide that what God has shown you is more real than what this moment reflects, and the moment will begin to change. Life must obey the script you persistently hold in consciousness. What you see with feeling is the life you call into form. And when you see yourself there long enough, consistently enough, sincerely enough, the outside no longer intimidates you. The waiting no longer frustrates you, because you are not waiting, you are manifesting. You are not begging, you are birthing. You are not doubting, you are declaring. Your new life begins the moment you dare to see it clearly and walk as though it were already here. You are not denied, you are not forgotten, you are not late, you are right on time, and everything you've seen in spirit is waiting for you, not to earn it, not to chase it, but to embody it, to become it, to accept it, to assume it, and in that assumption it will be, it must be, it already is. There comes a moment when silence becomes a sanctuary. When you cease from striving and enter into the stillness of spirit, you begin to hear differently, not with your physical ears, but with the ear of the heart. It is in this quiet center of your being that you become truly available to the divine whisper. It does not shout, it does not force, it simply speaks softly and consistently, waiting for your attention. You have been surrounded by noise of opinions, forecasts, memories, and fears. The outer world has been clamoring for your loyalty, trying to pull your gaze from the inner reality where all true transformation begins. But something in you has shifted. You are no longer content to be shaped by appearances, you are being drawn inward, where the real voice resides. This voice does not echo the chaos of the world. It speaks with calm authority, reminding you of who you really are. God speaks to the soul, not in arguments or explanations, but in impulses, in divine impressions, in still knowing. The mind tries to reason, but the spirit simply receives. And the more you trust this inner knowing, the more clear it becomes. Every great shift in your life will be preceded by a shift in your inner listening. You must stop consulting your senses to determine what is possible. You must stop asking the outer world for permission to move forward. The new thing God is doing in your life will not make sense to those who only operate by logic. It will not always make sense to even you. That's why you must learn to hear by faith, to listen beyond reason, and to follow what does not yet have external validation. This is not madness. This is alignment. This is the walk of the awakened. the ones who dare to obey even when they do not fully understand. Obedience to the divine prompt is not submission to an outside authority, it is agreement with your higher self. When God leads you, He leads you from within, as a vibration, as a shift in your inner state, as a vision that refuses to die, as a desire that keeps returning until you realize it is not separate from you. It is you in seed form, waiting to be watered by faith. And yet, there is a cost to this kind of obedience. You must be willing to walk alone for a while. You must be willing to be misunderstood. You must be willing to let go of the need to be validated by others. Not because they are wrong, but because they are not assigned to carry your vision. The instruction God gives you is not for public discussion. It is sacred. It is intimate. And until you can trust it in silence, you will not be ready to carry it in manifestation. This is why the wilderness always precedes the promise. Not as punishment, but as preparation. In the wilderness, you learn to hear without distraction. You learn to depend without evidence. You learn to walk not by sight, but by an inner word that says, "This is the way, walk in it." The wilderness is where the divine blueprint is carved into your spirit. It is where you learn that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. So now you understand why you were pulled away, why certain things fell apart, why you couldn't stay where you were. It was not rejection. It was realignment. God was tuning your inner ear, stripping away the noise, softening your resistance, and preparing your heart to say yes to something that cannot be explained, only lived. Your next breakthrough will not come by effort, but by obedience. It will not be produced by striving, but by surrender. It will not come by pushing harder, but by yielding deeper. Because when God does a new thing, He does it through those who are available. Not necessarily the most skilled or experienced, but the most surrendered. You must become comfortable with not having all the answers. You must become content to move with incomplete instructions. Abraham obeyed and went, not knowing where he was going. Moses stretched his hand over a sea that had not yet parted. Joshua marched around a wall that had not yet fallen. And you too are being asked to move before you see, to act before you understand, to step into what only makes sense in hindsight. But this kind of movement opens portals. It aligns you with divine timing. It activates favor you did not earn, and miracles you could not manufacture. Heaven rushes to support the one who dares to trust the inner whisper. Angels go before the one who obeys without delay. Resources flow to the one who walks in faith, not fear. And now you come to the final secret. The thing you have longed for, prayed for, waited for. It has already been given. It exists now, not in the future, but in the eternal present. The only distance between you and its appearance is your consciousness. God does not delay. It is we who delay ourselves by continuing to identify with limitation, lack, and separation. When you pray for breakthrough, it is not because God is withholding. It is because you have not yet fully accepted that it is already done. Breakthrough is not something you strive to receive. It is something you awaken to. It is the lifting of the veil, the dissolving of the illusion, the remembrance that you are already one with the answer. You are not working toward it. You are working from it. Every act of true prayer is not a request, but a realization. It is not a plea for rescue, but an alignment with what already is. When you pray, let it be done. You are not begging for something new to happen. You are declaring that what exists in spirit shall now be seen in form. You are saying, I accept what has always been mine. You are saying, I allow what has always been true to now be made visible in my life. This is the power of a prayerful state. Not to twist God's hand, but to open your own heart. Not to change divine will, but to change your perception. Prayer is not about convincing God to act. It is about convincing yourself that God already has. It is about anchoring yourself in the end result so deeply, so completely, that all doubt dissolves and only certainty remains. And that certainty becomes a vibration. That vibration becomes your frequency. And that frequency becomes your life. You begin to carry the manifestation before it appears. You begin to think from it, speak from it, love from it, walk from it, and the world has no choice but to catch up. This is the true breakthrough. Not a single event, but a shift in identity. You are no longer the one hoping for change. You are the one who has already changed. You are no longer praying as a victim, but as a creator. You are no longer waiting for favor. You are walking in it. So the prayer becomes, let me remember who I am. The breakthrough becomes, let me walk in what I already possess. The miracle becomes, let me express what has already been accomplished in spirit. You are not far from your blessing, you are your blessing. And when you realize that, the world must align. Let every word you speak now reflect the truth that it is already done. Let every thought you entertain reflect the truth that it is already yours. Let every emotion you cultivate align with the state of fulfillment. Not one day, not someday, but now. Because when you pray believing you have received, you shall have it. That is not wishful thinking, that is divine law. That is spiritual science. That is the blueprint God embedded within you. And you are finally ready to walk in it, to pray from it, to live in it. Not as one who is striving, but as one who is seated. Not as one who is hoping, but as one who is home. The breakthrough is not ahead of you, it is within you. It is not waiting on time, it is waiting on truth. And the truth is this: you are already enough, already chosen, already blessed, already equipped. And now, as you accept that without resistance, without hesitation, without apology, the doors will open, the waters will part, the walls will fall, the way will be made. Not because you forced it, but because you became it. And what you become, you cannot be denied, because you no longer pray from the mountain, you speak to it. You no longer ask for power, you walk in it. You no longer try to become, you remember that you already are. And in that remembrance, the new thing God is doing is no longer a mystery. It becomes your reality. It becomes your testimony. It becomes your life. As you step into this new thing God is doing in your life, remember that every breakthrough begins within your thoughts, your beliefs, and your deepest knowing. Trust the divine unfolding, even when the path is unseen. Embrace the silence where your true guidance speaks. Release what no longer serves you, and hold fast to the vision of the fulfilled promise. Live not as one who waits, but as one who has already received. For when you align your consciousness with the reality of your highest self, the world around you must conform. Your breakthrough is not a distant hope. It is your present inheritance. Walk boldly, live faithfully, and receive joyfully, for the new thing is already here, waiting for you to step fully into it. God has a plan for you. There's something you need to hear tonight. And not just with your ears, but with your spirit. You are not born without purpose. You are not wandering this earth by accident. God has a plan for you. It might not feel like it. Not when the doors keep closing. Not when the people you trusted walk away. Not when the light at the end of the tunnel feels more like a trick of the imagination than a promise fulfilled. But I promise you, just because you can't see the whole path, doesn't mean the path doesn't exist. Sometimes what feels like a setback is actually God setting the stage. What looks like rejection is really redirection. What seems like silence is divine strategy. You see, God is not moved by what you see with your natural eyes. He's moved by what He spoke over your life before you ever took your first breath. He's orchestrating things beyond your understanding, weaving moments, people, and even your pain into something greater than you could imagine. There will be days where you feel invisible, like your gifts don't matter, like your voice is too small to echo in a world that moves too fast. But listen to me. You are not invisible to God. You are not forgotten. You are not lost. You are exactly where you need to be, even if it doesn't feel like it. You have to trust that the process is holy. The struggle is sacred. The waiting is not wasted. You're in the hands of a Creator who doesn't make mistakes. Every scar you carry is a line in the story He's writing. Every delay is an act of love that will make sense in time. Every no you've ever heard is making room for a better yes. So don't rush the becoming. Don't curse the journey. Don't compare your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 22. Stay faithful. Stay rooted. Stay available. Because the moment you think nothing's happening, that's often when God is working the hardest behind the curtain. And when the time is right, we won't have to chase anything. The calling will call you. The doors will open because God touched the handle. The people you are meant to impact will hear your voice like a trumpet in the wilderness. You don't need to force what is already ordained. You just need to believe again. Believe in the promise. Believe in your anointing. Believe that your life is part of something eternal, something divine, something unshakable. This isn't about fame. It's not about applause. It's not about platforms or positions. It's about purpose. It's about obedience. It's about walking like your steps are ordered, because they are. You are a light in a world that desperately needs healing. You carry something sacred. Don't dim it to fit in. Don't bury it to be safe. You were born to rise, to fight the good fight, to carry your cross and walk with fire in your bones. So stand tall, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because your story, yes, your story is part of God's greater plan. And the world needs what's in you. Not later. Now. Let that truth settle in your spirit. Let it silence the lies. Let it awaken the part of you that's been sleeping under fear, under doubt, under delay. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. You are chosen. God has a plan for you. And when it unfolds, you'll see that every tear had a purpose. Every loss carried a lesson, and every step was guided by a hand that never let you go. There's something sacred about knowing you were born with purpose, not just a general idea or a vague hope, but a specific divine intentional design over your life. And sometimes the greatest battle you will ever fight is not against people, systems, or even circumstances. It's against the lie that tells you your life doesn't matter, against that quiet whisper that says you are replaceable, unseen, unneeded. But the truth, you carry something inside you that no one else on this earth ever could. A fingerprint of the divine, a voice meant to echo in places where silence has settled. A presence that shifts the atmosphere when you walk into a room, even if you don't notice it yet. The world will try to convince you that purpose looks like recognition, like standing on stages or being praised in public. That purpose is often quiet. It's in how you love people. It's in how you show up when no one else will. It's in the way you carry truth when everyone else bows to comfort. Purpose isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it looks like pressing on when everything in you wants to quit. Sometimes it's staying faithful to a dream that hasn't manifested yet. Sometimes it's believing in the promise even while you're walking through the wilderness. You are not an accident, not the product of chance or the result of randomness. Before you ever had a name, you had a calling. Before you ever cried your first tear, heaven had already whispered your assignment. That's how intentional your existence is. The world might not always validate you. People might overlook you. But God never misplaces what He creates with love. You were carved out of vision, molded with power, released into this world for such a time as this. There are lives attached to your obedience. There are doors waiting for your footsteps. There are answers waiting for your yes. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need to have it all figured out to be in purpose. Sometimes purpose unfolds one small step at a time, like a seed that becomes a tree, like a note that becomes a song, like a moment that becomes a legacy. You don't have to force your purpose to be real. You just have to agree with it. Walk in it, speak from it, breathe like it lives in you, because it does. There's a reason the enemy fights your mind so hard. There's a reason you faced storms that others didn't. Because when purpose is on your life, pressure will come. But pressure doesn't mean you're off track. It means something inside you is being activated. Purpose will demand you stretch. It will call you higher. It will pull you out of your comfort zone. And sometimes that feels like pain, but it's really just growth. Sometimes that looks like isolation, but it's really preparation. Sometimes it looks like losing everything, but it's really God clearing space for what can't be built on broken foundations. There will be days when you question it all, days when it seems like nothing is working, days when the weight feels heavier than the promise. But even then, especially then, you must remember who you are. You are not just someone trying to make it through. You are a vessel of light, a mirror of glory, a living testimony of what grace can do. Even your mistakes can't cancel the plan God has for you. Even your detours can't erase your destiny. You're not powerful enough to destroy what God has ordained. That should give you peace. That should remind you that your value isn't up for debate. You were chosen, handpicked, loved into existence. And because of that, you can walk with your head held high, not in arrogance, but in divine confidence. Because when you know you were made on purpose, for a purpose, You stop begging for permission to be who you already are. You stop asking the world to confirm what heaven already declared. You stop shrinking when you were born to rise. The truth is, your very breath is proof that purpose still lives in you. If you're still here, you're still needed. If you're still waking up, then there's still work for your life to do. That should give you hope. That should light something inside you again. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to trust that the one who called you knows how to lead you. And when you start walking in that truth, things begin to shift. Not always around you, sometimes within you. Fear starts to lose its grip. Insecurity begins to fade. And you begin to see yourself not as a mistake trying to be fixed, but as a miracle still unfolding. So, never question whether your life matters. It does, more than you know. And if you ever forget, remember this. God doesn't make extras. He doesn't make fillers. He only makes originals. And you, my friend, are one of them. But even with all that purpose resting on your life, it doesn't mean the journey will be smooth. In fact, sometimes it will feel like everything is working against you. The vision will burn in your heart, but the doors won't open. The calling will ring in your ears, but the world will seem to ignore it. That's when the second truth must settle in your soul. Setbacks are setups for destiny. It's easy to believe in purpose when everything's going right, when you're winning, when the applause is loud. But the real test of destiny is in how you handle the no's, the delays, the betrayals, because those aren't the end of your story. They're the tools that build it. Sometimes God uses opposition to sharpen your focus. Sometimes He lets you walk through the fire, so you come out pure, not because He's punishing you, but because He's preparing you. There are blessings that require brokenness first. Not because God delights in your pain, but because certain levels of growth can only be accessed through pressure. And that pressure, that heartbreak, that failure, that rejection, it's not a stop sign. It's a divine turning point. Every time the door closed, you were being protected. Every time someone walked away, you were being aligned. Every time you hit a wall, heaven was building a different road. But in the moment, it hurts. I won't lie to you. It feels personal. It feels unfair. You look around and wonder why others seem to be rising, while you're stuck. You question whether you missed your window, whether you misunderstood the calling. But let me tell you, delay is not denial. Delay is training ground. And often the deeper your calling, the longer the preparation. God doesn't build skyscrapers overnight. He digs deep foundations for what He plans to raise high. That means your silent seasons are not wasted. Your wilderness is not random. Your private battles are not meaningless. They are chapters in the story of becoming. They are evidence that something powerful is forming in you. Don't curse the setback. Don't despise the pause. Because in those very moments, God is doing some of His greatest work. He's stripping away what you thought you needed. He's realigning your heart. He's positioning you for something greater than you even prayed for. And when the time is right, when your character matches your calling, when your heart is fully surrendered, when your vision is purified, you'll look back and realize that everything that felt like a loss was actually a win in disguise. You'll see how the betrayal gave you clarity, how the closed door saved your soul, how the lonely nights built your faith, how the tears watered the ground for something new. You'll realize that destiny was never on hold. It was simply being shaped in silence. There's a weight to true purpose, a cost. And part of that cost is learning how to hold on when nothing makes sense. Learning how to trust when your hands are empty, but your heart is full of promise. Learning how to stand when everything in you wants to lie down and quit. Because the promise is still true, even when the process is painful. What feels like a setback is often God rerouting you to something more powerful than you asked for. What looks like a detour is really a divine redirection. You're not late, you're not behind. You're not forgotten. You are in training. You are in transformation. You are on holy ground, even if it looks like a battlefield. So don't let the setbacks convince you to give up on the vision. Don't let the pain silence your voice. Don't let the delay convince you that destiny skipped your name. Because the very things that tried to break you will one day become the testimony that builds others. You're not just surviving this for yourself. You're surviving for the people who will come after you, for the ones who will look at your life and find hope. You are paving a road that others will walk, and they need you to rise. They need you to keep going. They need you to believe again. So let the setbacks come. Let the obstacles rise. Because when God is the author of your story, even your lowest chapters are filled with purpose. And when the fullness of time comes, destiny will arrive, not in spite of your pain, but because of it. You were born with purpose. And even in the setback, God is still setting you up to fulfill it. It's easy to love the promise, easy to get excited about the destination, about the blessing, the breakthrough, the moment when everything finally comes together and makes sense. But what's not easy to love is the process, the in-between, the moments when your heart is full of vision, but your hands are still empty, when God speaks a word over your life, but nothing around you looks like that word could possibly come true. And in those moments, it's tempting to see the process as punishment, to believe that because it hurts, because it's hard, because it's lonely, then somehow you've done something wrong. But the truth is deeper than your discomfort. The process isn't punishment. The process is preparation. The process is sacred. It's where God molds you, shapes you, strips you of what can't go with you into the next level. It's where He teaches your spirit to trust Him when your eyes see nothing and your ears hear silence. It's where He breaks off ego, pride, fear, and insecurity. So what's left is pure, wholly strong enough to carry the weight of your calling. You see, everyone wants the glory. Few want the grind. Everyone wants the crown, but not everyone wants the cross that comes before it. And yet, without the cross, without the crushing, without the discipline, without the midnight wrestling, there can be no resurrection. There can be no elevation. There can be no authority that wasn't first forged in adversity. It's in the fire that gold is refined. It's in the wilderness that identity is revealed. And it's in the waiting room that character is formed. So don't despise the process. Don't resist it. Don't wish it away. Because what God is doing in you during the waiting is just as important, if not more, than what He's going to do through you later. You can't skip the process and expect to stand in purpose, because without the process, you'll lack the depth. You'll lack the humility. You'll lack the discernment to handle what God wants to give you. There's a version of you that exists after the breaking, after the struggle, after the lessons you didn't ask for, but desperately needed. And that version is the one who's ready. We live in a world that's addicted to speed, but God is committed to depth. And depth takes time. It takes pruning. It takes silence. It takes repeated tests of your heart, your motives, your surrender. Not to hurt you, but to heal you. Not to break you, but to build you. Because God doesn't want to just bless you. He wants to make sure the blessing doesn't destroy you once it arrives. There are things you're praying for that your character isn't ready to hold yet. There are rooms you're asking to enter that require a version of you that hasn't been fully formed. And God loves you too much to give you something that would crush you before you're ready to carry it. So He lets the process do its work. He allows the tension, the disappointment, the stretching, because He sees beyond what you see. He knows what you'll face 5 years from now. He knows the weight that's coming with the glory. He knows that if He doesn't strengthen your shoulders now, you'll collapse under the blessing later. It doesn't feel good. It won't always make sense. But faith is born in that very space where obedience lives even when the outcome is uncertain, where worship rises even when the walls haven't fallen, where surrender becomes more than a song. It becomes your posture, your breath, your identity. Some of the most powerful people in the kingdom are the ones who were hidden the longest, who had to learn to love God without applause, who had to show up day after day when no one was watching, who had to preach to their own reflection and believe their calling when no platform validated it, because they understood the process wasn't punishment. It was intimacy. It was transformation. It was divine setup. And one day when the page turns, when the light shifts and the doors begin to open, you'll realize it wasn't the spotlight that made you powerful. It was the dark room where God developed you. It was the secret place, the long nights, the tears no one saw. That's where you became who you really are. That's where the oil was pressed out of you. That's where the fire made your faith unshakable. So take heart. If you're in the process, you're in the presence. If you're being stretched, you're being sanctified. If you're walking through the valley, you're being prepared for the mountain. Nothing is being wasted, not the silence, not the struggle, not the slow days. It all matters. It's all being used. And while you're walking through the process, never forget, just because you can't see God working doesn't mean He's not. That leads to another truth that must anchor your soul. God works behind the curtain. We live in a world obsessed with evidence, with proof, with things we can touch and measure and post online. But the kingdom doesn't move like that. God often does His best work in silence, in secret. Behind the scenes where no one's looking, while you're sleeping, while you're crying, while you're questioning whether He even heard your last prayer. You may not feel Him. You may not see Him. But you are not forsaken. Heaven is not quiet, it's strategic. Sometimes what feels like divine absence is actually divine activity in a higher realm. God is not inactive. He is invisible. And there's a big difference. He moves pieces you don't know exist. He sets up connections you haven't seen yet. He speaks your name in rooms your feet haven't entered. He shifts hearts, opens doors, rewrites plans, all without asking for your permission or announcing it on the front page. Because real transformation doesn't need an audience. Miracles don't begin in the spotlight. They begin in the shadows, in the secret dealings of heaven, in the holy conversations between destiny and time. So don't measure God's movement by what your eyes can see. Don't assume nothing's happening just because your life feels still. God isn't on your schedule. He doesn't operate on human timelines. He doesn't need your calendar to release His glory. Faith means trusting that even in the silence, God is speaking. Even in the pause, God is planning. Even in the stillness, God is moving. And when He moves, He doesn't have to explain it to anyone. He just does it. Suddenly, swiftly, sovereignly, in ways that leave no doubt who was behind it all along. You may think your prayers are being ignored, but every word has been heard, stored, weighted with attention, because God doesn't just listen. He strategizes. He doesn't just react. He authors. He's writing a story that's bigger than your moment of confusion, bigger than your season of pain, bigger than your current lack of understanding. And one day the curtain will rise. The lights will turn on, and what you thought was forgotten will be revealed as fully formed. You'll see how all the pieces fit. You'll understand why certain things had to fall apart. You'll realize that the silence wasn't abandonment, it was orchestration. That heaven was working every moment, aligning every step, crafting a testimony far beyond your own imagination. You see, God isn't just interested in your comfort. He's invested in your completion. And that means sometimes He has to let you walk through rooms where you can't trace Him, so you'll learn to trust Him. Sometimes He hides the evidence so your faith can grow. Sometimes He steps behind the curtain, so your worship is no longer tied to what He gives, but who He is. He's not ignoring you. He's building something. Carefully, deliberately, layer by layer, in you and around you. And when the time is right, when your heart is ready, when your character is steady, He will pull back the curtain, and what felt like delay will be revealed as design. You'll look back and say, now I see it. Now I understand. He was working the whole time. He was protecting me when I thought I was being punished. He was promoting me when I thought I was being passed over. He was faithful, even when I couldn't feel Him. That's the God you serve. The one who works in mystery, the one who hides treasures in dark places, the one who is always on time, even when He doesn't move on your timeline. The one who calls you to trust not just in what He does, but in who He is. So don't lose heart. Don't give up. Don't curse the process. Don't fear the silence. Something holy is happening behind the curtain. Something divine is unfolding in the shadows. And when it's ready, when you're ready, the curtain will rise. The door will open. The season will shift. And you'll realize God was working all along. Pain has a way of trying to convince you that your life has lost its meaning. That because it hurts, because you feel broken, because you're walking through a storm you didn't ask for and didn't see coming, somehow your purpose must have expired. Pain whispers lie, tells you that what you're going through is pointless, that your suffering is wasted, that the dream must be dead because the night has been too long and the road has been too hard. But pain is not the end of your story. Pain is not a full stop. It is a comma, a pause, a sacred transition, a holy invitation. Because the truth is, your purpose isn't cancelled by your pain. It's often clarified by it. Purpose is not found in perfect moments. It's found in pressure, in tension, in heartbreak, in the valley where you thought you were alone, but God was pulling you deeper into Himself. The pain doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're alive. It means your heart still feels, your soul still longs, and in that ache, God is still speaking, still moving, still drawing you into a divine understanding that everything has purpose. Even the tears, even the seasons that didn't end the way you hoped, even the silence that seemed to last too long. There are parts of you that only come alive in the fire. There is a strength that only reveals itself after the breaking. There is a wisdom you could never access until you walked through something that forced you to let go of what you thought you knew. And yes, it hurts. But pain is often the birthing place of divine revelation. You begin to see differently, hear differently, walk differently, because you've been changed by the crushing, and that change is sacred. God is not a waster of wounds. He collects every tear. He records every cry. He understands every groan too deep for words. And in His hands, even your sorrow becomes seed. Even your suffering becomes sacred soil. You may not understand the why right now, but you can trust the who. The God who formed you didn't abandon you when the storm came. He's in the storm with you, not watching from a distance, but holding you in the middle of it, shaping something eternal in the temporary chaos. You don't have to wait until it makes sense to believe it has purpose. You don't have to feel strong to be held by strength. And you don't have to see the outcome to trust the process. What you're going through is not random. It's not meaningless. It's not a cosmic accident. It's part of something bigger, something eternal. God uses pain not to destroy you, but to transform you, to awaken the gifts that comfort never could. There are people you will heal one day because of the wounds you're carrying today. There are words you will speak that carry power because they were forged in silence and sorrow. There is a depth you will offer the world that only came because you were willing to let God meet you in the depths of your brokenness. So don't run from the pain. Don't numb it. Don't pretend it's not there. Take it to God. Let Him hold it. Let Him hold you. And as you do, you'll begin to see how even this, especially this, is shaping your destiny. You are not disqualified because you're hurting. You are not forgotten because you're struggling. Your life still matters. Your story still speaks. Your breath still carries purpose. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply keep going. Get up one more time. Breathe again, believe again, hope again. Even if your voice trembles, even if your steps are slow, that's faith, that's courage, that's purpose in motion. You may not feel strong, but your perseverance is sacred warfare. Every time you refuse to give up, you declare to the darkness that you still believe your life has meaning. And it does, not in spite of the pain, but through it. Which leads us into a truth that completes the picture. You are already equipped for this journey. You may not feel like it. You may be looking at your life right now, counting all the things you lack, all the reasons you think you're not ready. You might be thinking, God, I need more time, more strength, more resources, more support. But what if I told you, you already have everything you need? What if I told you that God, in His infinite wisdom, doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called? That when He formed you, He deposited inside of you gifts you haven't even discovered yet. That when He breathed life into you, He breathed divine potential, hidden in the soil of your soul, waiting for the right season, the right pressure to bloom. You don't have to be perfect to be purposeful. You don't have to have it all together to be powerful. You just have to be willing to trust that God doesn't make mistakes, that He doesn't give assignments without first giving the anointing to fulfill them. You may feel small, but the one who lives in you is mighty. You may feel unqualified, but God's grace is your credential. You've survived things that should have broken you. You've walked through fires that tried to consume you. You've faced storms that made you question everything. But you're still here, still breathing, still pressing forward. That's not just survival, that's strength, that's endurance, that's divine evidence that God has been equipping you all along. You've got insight now that you didn't have before. You've got empathy now that only comes from experience. You've got spiritual muscles now that were built through carrying burdens in prayer. You've got wisdom now that was sharpened in the dark. And you've got a voice now that's been refined by silence, by surrender, by sacred pain. Stop underestimating what's inside of you. The dream God gave you wasn't random. The vision isn't impossible. You were made for this, even if you're scared. Even if you've never done it before. Even if no one in your family ever walked this road, you were chosen. You are the one who breaks the cycle, who builds the bridge, who carries the light into places that have only known darkness. The enemy wants you to focus on what you lack, but God wants you to focus on who you are. You are chosen, you are anointed, you are capable, not because of your resume, but because of His Spirit. You carry within you the same power that raised Christ from the dead. That's not a metaphor, that's real. That's eternal. That's holy fire in your bones. You are more equipped than you know. You've been walking with God longer than you think. Every battle has taught you something. Every delay has stretched your discernment. Every disappointment has deepened your dependence. And now you stand at the edge of something new. Not because you have every answer, but because you finally know who to trust. You don't need more. You need to recognize what's already in your hands. You've got faith, you've got experience, you've got prayer, you've got favor, you've got a calling that can't be revoked. And you've got a God who never leaves, never fails, never forgets. You don't have to wait for perfect circumstances to move. Just move. Just walk. Just step. And every step will reveal more strength, more clarity, more of the God who walks beside you, in you and ahead of you. You don't need to compare yourself to anyone else. Your path is unique. Your story is specific. Your voice is needed. You are equipped. Not because life has been easy, but because grace has been sufficient. So go forward, not in fear, but in faith. Not in striving, but in surrender. You are already enough. Already ready. Already anointed for what's next. Trust that. Trust God. And trust the treasure He's placed within you. You don't have to wait to become what God has already called you. You just have to believe it and walk in it. And so, as you stand at the edge of everything you've walked through, every valley, every victory, every sleepless night and whispered prayer, let this be the moment you remember who you are. Let this be the moment you stop shrinking to fit the pain of your past and start expanding to hold the promise of your future. Because God has never taken His eyes off you, not for a second, not through the chaos, not through the confusion, not even when you doubted yourself. He has been weaving purpose through every season, even the ones that broke you. He has been working in the shadows, equipping you in the silence, refining you in the fire. And now He's calling you not to perfection, but to alignment. Not to strive, but to trust. Because everything you've lived through has been preparation for this moment. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are right on time for destiny. So lift your head, straighten your shoulders, silence the lies that say you're not enough, and step forward, not because you have all the answers, but because you know the one who does. Step forward, because you understand now the pain didn't break you, it built you. The process didn't punish you, it positioned you. And you are no longer waiting to become, you are walking as who God has already called. You are chosen, you are ready, and you are already enough. Now go, live like it,